after it was passed by members of the National Assembly. And there are so many layers to the Electoral Act of 2026. And of course, we saw what played out during the primaries of most political parties. Before now, we used to have the delegate system, but unfortunately, that was not accommodated in the electoral law of 2026. So we'll be looking at the Electoral Act 2026 layer by layer, and of course, how the political parties are also preparing for the 2026 general election. For this conversation, we have Bosun Osifowora, lawyer and political affairs commentator. It's our pleasure to have you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, before we talk about the Electoral Act 2026 and political stability in the country, charity, they say, begins at home. Your NBA election, why are you covering your face?
I'm not covering my face, I'm bold.
Tell us what happened. Was it transparent? Was it fair? What were the glitches?
Okay, so
Are you on the hot seat?
I'm not on the hot seat. I wasn't part of those who contested, but I voted as early as 7 a.m.
Okay.
and I didn't experience any glitch. So I think what happened was the basic complaint had to do with OTPs, because normally we've been registered with the association. So once you punch in your Supreme Court number, then they'll send you an OTP to your mail or to your
phone. Okay.
So I got mine and I voted everything in less than 2 minutes. I was done. It was much later in the day that I had people complain and, say things. And definitely, people who lose out in an election will definitely complain about the slightest thing. So, but the major thing was, it was a technological thing. Though, some 1-2 days before the election, we had that some people were trying to hack the same way INEC came out and said their own thing. But it was an election that was typical Nigerian thing. Technological issue, right? It was more of a technological problem than human problem.
Okay.
Now, so that was what happened. And then, those who lost came out and said they didn't
accept the results.
Right. They didn't believe in the result and all that. And they said that a lot of people were disenfranchised and everything. Quite a number were.
Okay.
But if you look at the voting pattern, if you look at the last election that brought the outgoing
President,
NBA chair, Afa Mosigwe, he had the people who voted was about 30,000. Then about 39,000. This time around, people who voted about 30,000, and which could swing the vote anyway.
Okay.
But that's what we have, and like I always say, the greatest room in the world is room for improvement. So we just hope to improve, because I've seen people attack me from everywhere.
They will, and I'm just about to attack you now.
Before you go, that's why I'm laying the foundation. That
about
you people are the ones who complain.
about rigging all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you don't get to a place,
I'd like to admit to a certain extent with what you've said, that perhaps the largest noise is being made by those who lost out in this election. But let's look at how this also can reflect on the overall perspective of when you conduct elections in Nigeria, especially now that we do know that INEC is also going to use some bit of technology in the election. And we do not want to hear after the election people also complaining that there were the machines didn't work. Now it looks like we're beginning to now again accept these glitches as part of a Nigerian thing. So how do we begin to ensure that, as part of the room for improvement, especially now that INEC is planning for an election, and I'm glad that the NBA election, has preceded the election in Nigeria, what are some of the lessons that INEC can actually learn here, so that even if people will complain in January, there will be less complaint, and INEC may be absolved of complicity?
First of all, let me say that the NMA too, they're doing their own thing. So let's just watch out.
Don't point accusing fingers.
Let's see how their own will pan out. But on a more serious note, now, see, when it comes to elections, people will complain. We were here when Al Gore and Bush had the election back in the day, and we've seen a lot of, so even in saner climes, there will be people who lose out of elections will always complain. But that does not take away the fact that some things went well and some things didn't go well with the election. Now, would you say we're not ready for technology in our elections?
To help elections?
Yes, we are. What stage are we? We are the stage of the teaching problems.
Okay.
In another 2, 3, 4 years, we'll get things right.
Okay.
I want to look at the positive side of this event because we're not used to these things. For all you care, I had to like talk to a few lawyers and actually teach them how to go about it. Some had data issue. The problems were personal. It didn't have anything to do with it. Some didn't know how to go about it. You know, we're still a bit, not laid back, but we're not too used to how technology works.
Right.
Now, so I believe over time we will perfect this thing. We can look at the negative side of it and start castigating the players and those who, the custodians and everything. But I wouldn't look at that.
Okay.
I look at it as a positive that, okay, this is a step. Now, INEC, like you said, can also take a cue from this. There will be complaints, there will be issues from data to the fact that some people's phones are not working well, and then there will be also complaints from their own end too. So some of the things they need to also get certain things right from their end, because if you one thing that will create problem is that if people keep complaining about the same thing every time, that shows that you have not improved. You have only just sat back and decided to do the things the way they are or as you've been doing it. So I think INEC need to brace up, look at these things, and then also our own NBA too. By the next election, we hope we won't have to complain about things like this, because if you look at the membership of the NBA, we're about 180,000 lawyers. And those who voted was about 30,000.
30. That was quite
low.
low. Voter apathy.
So it's but you see, if you look at the previous election, about 40,000. So not everybody will come out
and vote.
Now it's easy to say out of 180,000, 30,000. But what's the normal? What's the regular size, or what's the regular amount of people who come out and vote? So you also have to look at that to be able to make proper comparison. You can't generalize and say 160,000 were disenfranchised. No, a lot of people wouldn't be a part of it.
Okay. So back to the Electoral Act of 2026, which was signed into law by Mr. President, like I mentioned earlier. You talked about improvement just now. We had one in 2022, and then we had to amend and tinker with the current one, which is 2026. What were the flaws of the 2023 Electoral Act that you feel this 2026 Electoral Act has addressed that will make our polity better than it used to be?
Unfortunately, your introduction, you started with the flaw of the 2026. You know, there was the departure of the whole delegate thing.
Yeah.
And then when we came into this, it now looked like it was worse than this. So, but you see, one thing I try to say every time I'm in a situation like this is that there are no bad laws. You have bad enforcers. If you take the best of laws and you put it in the hands of wrong persons, you will have wrong results. If you take a wrong law and you put it in the hands of people who are sincere, you will have a credible system and a situation that will work well for everybody. That's what I'm saying in this, because no matter how much we tinker and amend, there's always room for amendment with laws. But as far as the players and the interested parties are not sincere with the process, people will circumvent things. And that's what we saw. You saw the way the primaries went. It was, in some cases, it was bloody. In some situations, it was like, what's going on? We voted, people lined up, and then the result that came much in the evening was much different from what people saw.
And we also saw people counting from 1 to 1,000 to 2,000.
It was amazing. And I'm like, okay, so what do you do? We've tried delegate, it didn't work. Or we felt we could come up with something better. Okay, let everybody participate. Then it became 1,000, became 3,000, right in our faces. And they were recording it by themselves. So it's almost like, what do you want? So that's why I always stand with the fact that it's not very much the law. The law is good to accommodate, the right situation. But the enforcers are the major persons. If the people handling the laws or handling those things are not sincere with it, you will keep having, in fact, it looks like it was worse than how it was before. So that's basically what it is. So the amendments have been done. improvements have been done. That is one part of
it.
Also, the law maintains the beavers, the law maintains electronic transmission. That's the one everybody is actually looking forward to.
Right.
But somehow, if you look at it, that has also been tinkered with, in the sense that if, and it's a viable alternative, that if technology doesn't work, then we resort to manual. That part, in the hands of a sincere person, you can trust the law. In the hands of people who are desperate,
the politicians.
So the fact also remains that as long as political offices remain juicy and attractive, people without a second address who see political offices as a means of survival will do everything to circumvent the process. And that one has to do with how much the people, the populace, want something credible. So it's an us versus them thing. So it's how much you guys come out and say, no, this is how we want it. Then that's what will determine how everything will go.
Right. Part of what the new law also stipulated or, has identified is that courts are not allowed to stop elections. Maybe you'd also like to help us break this down.
Party primaries.
Party primaries, yes. Again, judging from some judgments that we also got, if we use the ADC and the NDC as examples, where also the court has said some primaries would not be, could not be accepted, or what Congresses could not be accepted. Maybe is there a better interpretation of how that law really is supposed to work, or is it that the parties do not really understand what the Electoral Act has stipulated as guidelines?
Somehow, it looks a bit controversial, because if you read the face of the law, on the face of it, it says point blank, do not interfere in party primaries. But we've seen instances where the situation that came out of it needs definitely
it has to be interpreted by the court.
It has to be interpreted by the court. So it's what the court gives it. Sometimes, and then the test of every law is when you take it to the court and then the court comes out to say this is the proper pronouncement. That's why they say the judiciary interprets the law. Sometimes you make a law and you feel that this law is 100%, that this law is supposed to be an improvement on the previous ones, and then the amendment is an improvement on what we used to have. By the time you take it to the field, you just find out that it will fail as much as what you're trying to amend, because human beings keep coming up with new ideas to circumvent the law, new ideas to go over the law and find a way that it suits their interests and purposes. Now, so because this one, it's been interpreted differently by different persons and how it suits them. But I think we're waiting on the courts to come up with a definite position, because we've seen a lower court come against it. We've seen Court of Appeal uphold it, and then you start wondering. The law says don't dabble into party primaries. Are some primaries different from some primaries?
Right.
Is it like this law applies to
one party and does not apply
to the other party, or to what extent does this thing actually go?
Right.
So I think we need the Supreme Court to actually give a definite position on it, which, as it's going, we're most likely going to get there before this election. Because if we don't tidy up these things, we're going to have a chaos on our hands.
Right.
Okay. When you look at the primaries that were conducted by most political parties, like you rightly cited earlier, it had issues, and up until now, some people are still complaining that they are the candidates of a particular political party. Meanwhile, the political party actually took some other names to INEC for them to be registered as those that will represent the party in 2027. This kind of crisis, what kind of credibility is it going to bring to our electoral process in 2027?
Okay, I always say that you don't use a fraction of an event to define the entire thing. Some of these things happened in bits and pieces. It's not the overall position. But it doesn't take away the fact that a wrong was done. Literally across all the states, we had these complaints. And I think the whole thing stemmed from the massive participation of all, the way the party primaries went. The last time it was a delegate issue, which they said Assembly didn't pay attention to some things. They decided to pay attention to it and then, okay, let everybody vote. And it looks like we're going back to the 80s, where you know that option A4 thing, where people would just line up. But then it was still a bit credible than what we have now. I have more than 10 videos on my phone where somebody jumped from 13 to 50, then to 100, then, you know, like that. So the way this one panned out, in some places, it didn't really go well. And then comes back to the earlier question we asked that, okay, if you see somebody count 13, 14, 55, 158.
Where is the missing link?
You don't say court shouldn't come into that kind of thing. So I think we also, the way it is, there might have to be a part 2 of the law because we have to revisit it because people have started circumventing the process and they're doing it with all the might and everything they've got. So we might have to come up with it. Law is not something also that you keep amending per second.
Absolutely.
But as you test it, you have to go back and see what will work because everything hinges on the credibility
of the process.
INEC. And everybody will now blame INEC. And you can see from what is on ground that it is not very much INEC. It is more of the people with interests. Now, so we're at a crossroad where maybe do we go back and do a further amendment? Now, if you do a further amendment, what is the guarantee that they won't come up with something else? Because they're thinking. So it's like people who are into fraud. The more you come up with laws to curtail them, they also are looking at the system and trying to come up with something that, okay, this is another loophole. Let's find a way around it. And you see, but everything boils down to the fact that if political offices are no longer financially attractive, people will go about their normal lives. And then you see that it will be unattractive to people.
Right. I mean, like you rightly pointed out that laws sometimes are meant to help guide the system. And perhaps again, like Ajibola asked, that what exactly is it about the 2026 Electoral Act that could be seen to have been better than what we had in the previous law? And so what we have on ground at the moment, and looking at the facts that this was created for better and credible elections in Nigeria, and we intend to have an election in January. So looking at the provisions of the Electoral Act 2026 and the current state of political parties who are vying for posts during this election, are you certain that the Electoral Act is able to put everyone on their toes at ensuring that indeed we do have a credible election in January?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, the Electoral Act 2026 is what we have. And we have to work with it.
Even though we have identified that there could be some loopholes.
Yes. So it's for the custodians to now see how best they can manage this thing. There's no perfect law.
Right.
All right? Now, but then the law has retained, okay, before now, we were doing manual counting. Then came the 2022 Electoral Act with BVAS and all these things. Then came the amendment with electronic transmission
of results.
It was there in the law, but now the laws. When we went to the field, we saw that some people nobody emphasized that people will want to hack the system until we got to the playing field. Then they came back again and said, okay, fine. In the event that technology doesn't work,
then use the manual.
Yes. Now, so we put the two together, but you can rest assured that people will try their best to come up with anything that will suit their interests. Absolutely. Do we now throw away the law? No. We keep working at improvements. Because right now, literally what is in the 2022 is what is in the 2026 with tiny amendments. And the amendments in 2026 was geared towards making massive participation, massive voter participation. But we have seen that in trying to do this, people have also found a way around it. That, okay, fine, you want massive participation, we'll give you what is more than massive. So that's basically what it is. That's why we keep coming back to the fact that it's the enforcers, not necessarily the law. That's the problem. What we have will work in any same climate.
But just to ride on your response now to what you said earlier, that, and perhaps it's also not quite tidy to continue to amend laws from time to time, from 2022, now 2026, and yet we've noticed that there are a couple of other things that we could either improve or take away totally from this act. But if you also look at the enforcers or the players whose interests the Electoral Act is actually protecting, do you think that they really want the Electoral Act to be perfect or to even suit the system where things will really work?
They don't care about what's perfect. They only care about interest.
Absolutely.
I mean, interest is you don't play it down. Because interest that is anchored on survival, people would do anything to survive. And that's basically what we have here. Because this office is what some people have going for them. I think a couple of interviews ago, we said here that once you get into the political class in Nigeria, outside there, you become honorable. Even if you were dishonorable, you become, people start giving you some respect that ordinarily some people don't deserve.
Right.
Like that, you become financially stable. If not, some call it blessed. Well, I mean, there's financial stability, and there's a whole lot that comes with it. So imagine somebody who was struggling. We've had people come out and say, I was selling recharge card, now I'm governor. I was doing this. So you think he wants to go back and sell recharge card? This process of selling recharge cards has changed.
He would rather do everything possible.
So he would do everything to sustain himself in power. So that's basically what we have. So, and then if you look at even the new law, it's come up with stiffer punishments, penalties for offenders, electoral offenders, and all that. But people are undeterred.
Because again, okay, it's fine. I think Ajibola has a question, but I would come back to that question earlier. And I was going to ride on what you said concerning whether or not, the stiffer penalties. Yes, there are laws, but again, the enforcers are the problems. Because we haven't really seen the police prosecute anyone for electoral offenses.
I've seen quite a number.
Okay, you are a lawyer.
I've seen quite a number, but in fact, I had
do they take it to the highest level where the law has
yes, they do. Every time on social media, once there's an election, whether states level or by elections, you see that people come up. You see every time they arrest people with money, they arrest people trying to
Let me hold your thoughts on Mr. Osifowora. We need to take a commercial break. When we return, we'll come back to his response, talking about whether or not there are stiff penalties or whether or not the law enforcers also go ahead to ensure that anyone caught are prosecuted. We'll be back after this break.
When malaria knocks you down, you can be sure parasites are having a party in your system.
Welcome to our new kingdom, guys!
Comel, an effective